It's week 5 and you're still alive. Let's scratch and survive. All right, guys, scratch and survive in week 5 NFL. It has been a rough go in survivor pools. But if you're watching this, hopefully you guys are still alive, and I appreciate all the good comments that you guys have and your appreciation for the show. Share it with your friends. Of course, subscribe to this channel, and you'll be able to get notifications as soon as we drop these. So we got a lot of other really good content inside of the Sharp app, and the Sharp app's bringing this to you guys. So give us some love over in your Play Store, App Store, or go down below. There'll be a link where you can download the Sharp app, get content like this, plus a lot of other really good sports betting information. And of course, we do use the Sharp app to help us with these survivor picks. Now, let's jump right into this week and what we got going on. Now, last week, Green Bay, that was the chalky pick. The pick I wanted you guys to take in the smaller size pools. I took it in my small pool. You know, when we get to those levels, we always talk about when we get to the level where the pool is winnable, really, that's when you want to start going chalkier. Now, we'll start to figure out maybe some more game theory beyond that, and we'll start to maybe fade the chalky pick when we're trying to win it. But in a lot of these weeks, we're going to be going chalky. Last week with the Green Bay pick, and we'll see this week as we got Buffalo, a huge favorite, if that's the way we want to go. Like I said, sometimes there's some instances where we've got 2 or 3 picks that are really close, and that's where we're going to want to take the pick that no one else is going with. And of course, we don't always know which way that's going to be, but we'll try to fade where the majority of people are. We're not going to see that this week, but let's jump right into Survivor Grid, see what we've got going on for this week. Now, you see Buffalo, the biggest favorite on the board, 14.5 points, and the obvious choice. I think this is the first time we've got one where I'd say we're a lock to win this game. Now, it's never a lock, obviously, but I think we'd be all super surprised here. Rookie quarterback goes into Buffalo and is able to beat the Bills. Bills still look like the best team in football, if not the best. They are the second best team. So small pools, I definitely want to just counterfeit everyone else. And if you're going to get, if you're down to less than 10 people, not everyone's going to take Buffalo. They're going to hold them. Let them make the riskier pick, and we'll keep knocking people down. You probably had that last week. If you took Green Bay, you probably had a handful of people who took some other picks, and they possibly lost last week. So that just keeps eliminating people. We're going to stay chalky. We're going to try and get the most obvious pick. And this week, it's just the obvious pick is the most obvious pick by far. You're looking at on here an 87% win percentage. And in other words, we've got 87% chance that we're going to win this game. Everyone else is going to be down in that 75 or sub 75% range. If people took Green Bay last week, they can't take them again this week. And they're playing the Giants. So that's going to be one of the bigger spreads of the week. Kansas City maybe on the Monday night game will be another one, but I think it looks like, according to Survivor Grid here, Tampa 18.6% right now of people are picking them in pools. Understandable there. We really haven't had opportunities to take Tampa. This would be one of the first shots you have. So we'll take a look at maybe different types of pools if we want to go with Tampa. Minnesota is going to be another decently popular pick, and Jacksonville, a pick I like. That will, again, be popular, 14% against Houston. They're going to be about a touchdown favorite in that game. Let's jump over to the spreadsheet, and we'll take a look at what we got going on. Now, this is at a 0 future weight, and I look at this always, guys, right, when we're looking at smaller pools that we have a chance to win. And, of course, it's always going to give us the team with the highest spread, and that is Buffalo this week. So Buffalo is going to be your number 1 pick. Tampa is going to be your number 2 pick, and of course that coincides with the pick percentages. They are 1 and 2 in pick percentages because most people don't really use game theory. They are just picking who they think is going to win. Their goal is to survive, and as I always tell you guys, our goal is not to make as many weeks as we can. Our goal is to be the last one standing at the end. So if that means taking some chances early and getting knocked out, so be it. We are a huge underdog to ever win any of these pools anyway, especially when they're large amounts. If it's just 100 people, you're only a 1% chance if you have one entry to win. And of course, you can do the math when it's 1,000 or 5,000 type of entries. You've got to take some risk, and that's why we do that. So for those of you in a pool where we're seeing maybe 10 people, 15 people, or less, then I think the obvious choice here is just take Buffalo, let everyone else risk it on someone else. If you're in a slightly larger pool, let's see what it gives us here. And it wants to move down to Jacksonville. Again, that's the third choice. So this does make sense. And I do like that pick. If I was in a slightly larger pool where it's not going to end this weekend, and maybe I want to hold on to Buffalo, if I have something like 1 out of 50, 1 out of 75, maybe I'm looking here at the Jacksonville pick, and then I'll hold off on Buffalo. The problem with that is we do this for a couple of reasons, right? Why do we do this? Well, first thing is we want to fade. Why do we fade the chalkiest play in larger pools? And obviously, the first reason is if that chalky play loses, we gain a whole lot on the rest of the field because you're going to have a big chunk of the field on that chalky pick. If we take another pick that happens to win, we pick up a lot of spots, a lot of equity. I always talk about the equity. We pick up a ton of equity in the pool if we're able to catch maybe the second or third choice as a winner and the first and second choice or either or go ahead and lose. Now, in this case, this week, there's such a disparity between Buffalo and the rest of the teams here that I think the probability of that Buffalo loss is lower. And as such, we don't necessarily need to fade that pick. So again, if I had 2 picks out of 50 or 100, I'm definitely using Buffalo with one of them. If I had 1 pick of 50, I would contemplate using Buffalo here, but I could totally get behind using a Jacksonville pick. If you wanted to go to Green Bay, if you want, depending on obviously who you've got left, you can bounce around to maybe some of these lesser picks. But if I had multiple picks, I want to make sure I do have Buffalo as one of those picks, right? So some of the other picks, right? Jacksonville or Tampa, that makes sense, and Green Bay. Those would be the 4 I'd be looking at in any reasonable type of pool that you have to win. When we start getting in the pools that are going to be really difficult, where you've got 1,000 people, 2,000 people, maybe you've got 5 picks, 10 picks, and God forbid if you have 1 pick. Let's just talk about the 1 pick. The 1 pick person, there's like 1,000 people left in a pool. Let's just look at it from a 50% standpoint, and let's say you just had the 1. This is still giving us Buffalo at the 50% level. Let's put this in. Let's say we got 5 picks left out of 1,000. All right, so it's giving us the 3-2 Jacksonville with Buffalo. That's going to be at a 50% future value. If we went up to 75% future value, it just flips it here where it likes Jacksonville a little bit better. So I do as well. If I was in a large pool, if I had maybe 2, 3, 4 picks in a pool with 1,000 people left, 1,500 people left, I would definitely grab me a piece of Buffalo. I'd probably be looking at maybe in a pool of that size. I kind of like where this is going, where you've got 1 Buffalo. It says 2 Buffalo. Maybe we go to 1 Buffalo and take a couple of Jacksonville's and New Orleans. I don't mind that at all because now I'm getting a team in New Orleans. You see pretty high future value number, which means they do not have a ton of future value. When we go to the Survivor grid, we could probably see that a little bit better. Let's take a look at where New Orleans is. So as you can see, Cincinnati, Arizona, Vegas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Rams, San Francisco, at Tampa. I mean, you're just not taking them, right? So we wouldn't need them till super late in the season. So this is probably your best bet. Let's just say, and I hate to look all the way to week 15, but just let's look at that week. You'd have Kansas City, Buffalo. Odds are you're going to probably have those teams taken by that time, Philly. But San Fran, there's a good chance that you have them alive by the time we get to that week. So if we get to week 15, there's a possibility here that you're not even going to need New Orleans. But I'd rather take them now, and then I'll figure out week 15. But the fact that it's 10 weeks away or 11 weeks away, I hold very little weight to that. If you're in a large pool, yes, it's going to probably get to that week 15, but we're going to sort it out by then. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be quarterback changes. There's going to be a lot of things that go into week 15. So if I don't see anything in the immediate future, which I don't, where I'm going to need New Orleans, I like that pick in a larger pool. All right, so we're always just looking for the size of the pool and how much equity we have left. Now, the more equity you have in the pool, in other words, if you started out with 10 entries at $10 a piece, you put into the pool $100. And let's say there were 1,000 entries to start, that means there was 10,000 in the pool. If you are now down to 5 entries, but your pool is down to 200 people, right? So there's 200 people now competing for that $10,000, which means each of your entries is worth $50. If you've got 5 entries at $50, you now have $250 of equity, means you've increased your chances by 2.5 times from when you initially started the pool. If that is the case, I like to go a little chalkier. I've already got equity. They're trying to catch me. The pool's trying to catch me now. So I want to be chalkier. So it's not just how many people are left and how many people you have in the pool. It's what your equity is. That's why I talk about equity. Yes, it only matters at the end because you want all of the equity at the end, but it's going to vary on how we play the game, right? I don't want to be as risky if I've taken some risk early on and now it's benefited me and I've got 5 of the 200 left hypothetically in a pool, right? That's where I'm going to go a little heavier on the chalkier plays. And I still want to be able to balance it out so that I have options here in the future. That's another thing. So we talk about this. Make sure that if you're taking Buffalo and you've got many picks, right? You've got many lines and you have, let's say, Green Bay as a pick. Let's look at it on Survivor Grid because it's going to show you a little bit better. Let's say you've taken Green Bay with one of your picks. And now this week you want to take Buffalo with one of your picks, right? So in the weeks that we need Buffalo again here, will we need Green Bay? Potentially, right? Depending on how many picks you have. If you've taken Philly, right? Don't use Buffalo on the same line as Philly because you're going to probably need Buffalo come week 9, right? So try and avoid it. It's not always easily avoidable, but pay attention to your lines and try to stagger the good teams with each other. You don't want to have a line of Buffalo, Philly. I mean, I guess we can call Green Bay a good team, but if you've got like Kansas City, Green Bay, Buffalo, Philly, all on the same line, that's the line I want you guys to get a little riskier with. And if by risk, that means we're going down to the Jacksonville pick, or we're taking, let's see, what are the other games that we could take here that are going to be a little riskier? You know, we got the Jacksonville pick, the New Orleans one, that for sure, right? So if I had a very chalky, if I have something that's got Buffalo and Philly, a line that's got those 2 teams in it already, well, then I want to get that, I want to make that line more profitable. And again, not just future value or the equity in your pool doesn't just, it isn't just calculated by the amount of picks you have left in relation to the number of picks that are remaining or alive in your pool. Like I just stated, that's part of it. So you've got, in that hypothetical, you had $250 worth of equity. But if I had a line that used the Bears and it's used, let's say New Orleans, and it's used, it's used some of the weaker teams as opposed to one that's used Buffalo and Philadelphia and Green Bay. Well, that Buffalo, Philadelphia, Green Bay one, technically, if every entry is worth $50, that may be only worth 35 or 40 because I've gone pretty chalky to get to this point. Whereas the one that I've used some weaker teams might be worth $65, $70. It's hard to really quantify exactly what it'd be worth, but hopefully you understand the concept where that line is worth more. If it's worth more, that one I want to preserve the most. So that's the one I want to use my Buffalo on. That's going to drop some of my equity, but hopefully I'm going to gain equity now because people in the pool get eliminated, right? So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. This is a pretty, as far as weeks go, this is one of the easier weeks that we've seen as far as decisions that we have to make. Of course, these injuries happen every week, so we'll try to figure it out from there. I don't think we're going to be looking too much at this Thursday night game, which is Denver and the Colts. Obviously 0.2%. Not too many people looking at that one. So it's going to give you some time here to really take a look at the week. Remember the Green Bay game and the Giants, that is in New Orleans. So if you have to put it in Sunday morning, you're going to want to have to get up early and make sure that you have those in and check the rules in your pool. Make sure that you can still put picks in by 1 o'clock, even after that 9:30 game in London goes off. So pay particular attention to that. You went through it last week, so I'm sure you know what your rules are. Now, Minnesota's another team that's getting some play here. Justifiable against the Bears. Now, we have how much future value here with them. Now, on the spreadsheet, which I'm not bringing up in this second, 123. They actually, at least on the spreadsheet, it does show some future value for 123 is a decent number here for future value. The lower the number, the better. So that's why it's not popping up as much. Now, if I had more picks, which I do in some of mine, now I got killed in some of my picks because I went too heavy on Detroit and Pittsburgh last week. But I think I have 18 in that one that I'm looking at. Let's just look at that, what it would give me. And if I was at like 75, which I might even have to increase that a little bit, but let's say 75, if I went 6 different teams, it's giving me Buffalo, Green Bay, Tampa, Minnesota, Jacksonville, and New Orleans. I have no problem with any of this. Right? Sometimes it just makes sense. Sometimes, like you said, we've had to sort of mess around with it a little bit when it's giving us too much of a weak team. But the fact here that Minnesota still has some decent value in the future, that's probably why we want to go a little less on them. Let's look at just what that value is, because then you do have to see it in practice. And let's see what it looks like here with the Minnesota line. So definitely not next week. Week 8, potentially, against Arizona. It's possible. If, Indianapolis might be a better pick. Dallas, if you have not taken them yet, probably a better pick. But there's a potential there that on some of our picks that we may be taking Minnesota at home against Arizona. That's possible. Let's look at where we are. Yeah, I mean, in week 9, most likely not. So, yeah, you're not going to need Minnesota maybe until New England, the Jets, which is week 12 and 13. So, yeah, I don't mind taking them here at all. I know they do have some future value, but that future value is kind of off into the distant future. So, again, Minnesota, not a terrible play. If you don't like the New Orleans play and you want to move over to Minnesota, I am good with that. Let's just see. New Orleans is getting 1.7. So, I do kind of like it better than Minnesota this week, taking New Orleans just because it's so low owned and because you're never going to have another chance. So, I would lean New Orleans over the Minnesota pick. But again, if you've got a lot of picks, you're going to want to kind of mix this up a little bit. I think this is a good week to go chalky in the smaller pools. You're going to definitely want to counterfeit the chalk in larger pools depending on what your equity is, right? So figure out your equity. The more equity you have, the more we can get a little chalky in the pool. The less equity you have in that pool, the less chalky you're going to have to take some risks, all right? That's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you guys can survive. Check out the Sharp app, and I will be back with you next week with more Scratchin' and Survivin'.